The anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is usually commemorated each year. We have an event here each year that commemorates that. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was in Warsaw. The Jews were separated from the general populace and kept behind walls that were built to create a separate area, a ghetto, where the Jews were forced to live. Beginning in 1939, those Jews were basically starved. They were put on work details. And then the Nazis began to deport the Jews and take them to Treblinka, which was a place that they had built just to murder Jews. They gassed them to death in that camp. The Jews of Warsaw began to understand what was happening. The Jews of Warsaw decided they weren't going to allow themselves to be killed, even though they realized there really wasn't a chance that they could beat the Nazis. They wanted to die honorably. And so in the middle of April, as the deportations were finishing up, there were about 30,000 Jews who were left in Warsaw. They began an uprising. And with makeshift arms, they began to fight the Nazis. The Nazis had to withdraw, and the Jewish community fought back for weeks. The Nazis had to bring in reinforcements, and they basically had to burn down the ghetto in order to end the revolt. And it was a choice that the Jews had made, that they were going to die honorably. They were going to die not as victims, but as people who were going to stand upright and fight for what they believed in, even though they really understood it was a helpless cause, but they wanted to do what was right. The events of that uprising are meant to provide people with the idea of hope in a time when there was no hope. The non-Jewish residents of Warsaw saw the lessons of the ghetto uprising, and they themselves went into a revolt against the Nazis. I think what we want people to understand when they come here is that the Holocaust happened because of choices that individual people made. And those messages that people heard, they had a choice whether they were going to join in the persecution or if they were going to stand against it. And unfortunately, very, very few of them made that choice to stand against. We do have here in the museum an exhibit dedicated to those who stood against, to those resistors, we call them the righteous amongst the nations, who stood against this kind of behavior and said, no, we have to act to protect those who are not like us. And so when you ask, how could it happen? It happens because people are willing to accept the idea that people who are not like them are less than them. We recognize not everyone are like us, but we want you to understand that just because they're not like you doesn't mean they're less than you. And so that series of decisions that people make is what causes the Holocaust. And that's what we want guests to understand, the visitors when they come here. In addition to the choices people make, where we talk about the bad choices people made and the series of bad choices that people make, you also have to think about the good choices that people make. And even during the Holocaust, I'm sitting here in front of a boxcar where in cars like this, Jews were packed like sardines, 80 to 100 people. There wasn't room to sit. And I remember reading the story of strangers are stuck in a room like this, and they're going to be, it turns out, days being taken on these trains to concentration camps, and there's no room to sit down. So somebody on the train organizes and says, you know what, there's room for a quarter of us to sit, let's take turns. And so he arranges 25% of the people should sit down, they get a rest for a couple of hours, then the next group does. The choices that people make, even in really limited, restricted circumstances, also matter. Those are things that really, really touch me when I come through here to hear about the resilience of people and the heroism, not just of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, but also the heroism of people that are making choices in extremely difficult situations. I'd like people to be welcome to join us here at the Holocaust Memorial Center. Our doors are open, literally, and we would encourage everyone to come and see the center for themselves. We have a public tour every day at 1:30. Sundays as well, we're closed on Saturdays. We encourage visitors to take that tour with a guide, with a docent. We have a great group of volunteers who come and lead those tours. It takes about an hour and a half to take your way through the visit. And almost every day we have a Holocaust survivor who speaks afterwards. We say that survivors are called survivors for a reason. I don't think you find any of them have any allergies or asthma or anything like that. These are people who are, you know, they've figured out a way to live on the most horrific, unimaginable circumstances. These are people who believe in their independence and believe that they have an opportunity to make a difference and want to do that. And it's amazing for us because they really are providing an experience for people they can't hear anywhere else. this is a chance really to speak to someone who experienced something that's almost unimaginable. I think that it's important that people understand that the lives of the people who survived the Holocaust, it would be easy for them to sort of have given up. But instead they make a choice, and basically they're making that choice every day when they wake up in the morning to make a difference in the world. And so they come and they speak to the students, and they're speaking to them from their hearts, and they're sharing some of their story, which is really difficult. I see them afterwards. It takes a lot out of them, but it's important to them, not only to tell their story, but also to share with these people what it is that these young people can do in their lives, how they can make ethical, good choices in their lives, and those differences add up. And so they're encouraging people to do that in their own lives. And that's, I think, why it's so important that people come and visit.